As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, its history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Roca. I'm a voiceover artist and host and actor here in Los Angeles, California.
And today we're doing another of our great directors.
Yeah.
You know, we've done Steven Spielberg, we've done Stanley Kubrick, we've done Quentin Tarantino, Sidney Lumet, and of course the great Orson Welles. Yeah. And I think we're adding another one to our list today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese. And you know, in a lot of ways, of those 70s directors, he might be the guy that's lasted the longest and continued to do great films. Maybe other than Steven Spielberg.
Probably. That's probably. You could probably argue both. You could make a really good argument for an hour about which one is more valid as a still continuing to be a successful and good filmmaker. Yeah. Good being the operative word in that sentence. Yeah.
Well, a few of them are not with us anymore, like Sidney. Well, Sidney Lumet's an earlier one. He comes out of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I'm taking Coppola,
Bogdanovich.
Yeah, those guys there.
From
that time. Yeah. But Scorsese, definitely. Yeah.
Scorsese, because he continues, and even though, like, you know, there are moments where you go, oh, that movie didn't quite hit, but then a few years later, there'll be another one that just he hits out of the park.
Yeah.
And today we're doing, we debated a bit about which one we should do, because there's so many, and we're going to return to Scorsese again.
Absolutely. Many, many times, I think, through the course of this podcast.
But we haven't done a gangster film yet, and it seemed like time to do Goodfellas.
Yeah, and for those of you clamoring for Godfather, we're waiting for the right time for that one. That's coming. That's an opus, you know, so we got to build up to that, I think.
Well, and this is, you know, in how we pick our films. We don't want to just go, let's look at the AFI top 10 list and do the 10.
Right.
You know, we want to give you a wide variety of films. And,
Absolutely.
And Godfather's definitely coming. But it's funny to talk about Godfather in relationship to Goodfellas, because they are, I think, or Godfather 1 and 2 are the greatest. Along with Goodfellas, these are the three greatest gangster movies of all time.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely.
Or mafia movies, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
And they're totally different.
Yes.
And you could go like, oh, they're both accurate. They're both well researched. They're both made by Italian Americans. They both have a deep sense of personal in them.
Yeah.
And they're completely different.
Yeah. And the eras that are explored in both films, both series of films, definitely.
Yeah.
So that being the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and then 80s as it goes forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was funny. I was thinking a lot about what is the difference between Coppola as a filmmaker and Scorsese. And the thing that I came up with is that Coppola is operatic.
Yes, grandiose.
Yeah,
so much more.
Big themes and also personal. Like by the time this comes out, I think our episode on Apocalypse Now will have come out.
Oh yeah.
And Apocalypse Now explores madness and morality and human frailty and violence.
Right.
And it is completely different from Goodfellas. And Godfather is completely different from Goodfellas. And it seems like Coppola is interested in the big.
Yeah.
Big themes and not necessarily realism in the same way.
Right.
It's like personal and big and operatic. And Scorsese is interested in the real. You know, and they're both very theatrical filmmakers, but it's just, you know, you could watch The Godfather and then watch Goodfellas, and it's just the experience is they're nothing like each other.
Yeah, it's a deconstruction of the myth of the gangster. That's what I think Goodfellas is. And I think Coppola was trying to do that with Godfather, but he made, and Pacino's personality, he made the character of Michael Corleone together. They made the character of Michael Corleone so attractive as a villain, so attractive as for lack of a better term, a heel, you know, and we couldn't help. And he tried to make him even more of a villain in the second one, and it didn't quite work either. So this is what's interesting. Whereas you see here in Goodfellas, there are so many villains in the film by every definable trait that a villain is, but we again can't help but feel an attraction to these guys because of the force of personality of the actors that were cast to play these parts. And then eventually we do turn on them as the film goes on.
About it.
Yeah.
In a major way.
Yes.
Well, and I think and you do turn on Michael Corleone too, but it's different. And it's just I want to, you know, it's just an interesting thing to take a look at. And I think part of the difference is that Michael Corleone's motivation is essentially moral at the beginning.
Right.
Is that his motivation is it's about family.
Right.
Is that I have to, and when he goes through, and obviously we're not talking about Godfather here, we'll talk about it later, but when he makes his first criminal choices, they are to do the right thing, and we admire him at the beginning of that movie. there is no moment in this film, except maybe one I can think of, where Henry Hill is doing things for moral reasons.
Right.
He's not. That he is doing things to get ahead because it's fun, to look good, to have, sex and drugs and partying and not be part of the regular rules of society.
Yeah, he did not want to fit the norms of a 9-to-5 job. That's very clear throughout the beginning of the film how what a difference his father was to him. His father, in his mind, was a working stiff. He wanted the attractive lifestyle of the gangster, and that's what we see throughout the beginning of the film. And it's really well done the way Scorsese constructs that, because as a kid, when you're a young kid watching that movie, you understand the desire of that kid to be, to be more, to be successful, to be what he sees as success. And it's very similar to what you see in the inner cities, like not to make too much of a strict correlation, but you see the inner cities, like people see gang leaders or drug dealers, and they have nice cars, they have money, they have these chains. And when you come from a poor area, sometimes you can be lured in by that and think it's a glamorous lifestyle and think the violence is like cool and all this kind of jazz, and you get caught up in it, and that I think happens.
If you don't have anything else to model,
right?
It's like, because if it's like you look at there's rich billionaires, Bill Gates or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Well, you're a poor kid, you can't look and go, I could be that.
Right. There's not professors standing on the street corner with having competition on whiteboards about formulas and what have you.
You see this guy who grew up in your neighborhood, lived your kind of life, went your kind of school, and now he's driving a Cadillac Escalade. You go, that's something I could do.
Absolutely.
So how'd you first come to Goodfellas?
Oh, in the theater, just like everyone else. I was, I was in my 20s, late teens, early 20s when it came out, and I was super excited to see it. Obviously, Scorsese, by this point, I was a bona fide cinephile, so anything that was coming out with Scorsese's name on it, I went to see. And so I saw it in a theater, I think in Virginia, with a bunch of friends who were friends of mine from high school, and we all got together and watched it, and it was just amazing from front to back. One of my favorite films.
It's a kind of an overwhelming film.
Yeah, I
saw it in the theater too, and you're and my timing, I think, is pretty similar because I don't remember what my first Scorsese film was. I think it was Taxi Driver, and I think it was. Maybe I'd seen Color of Money or something like that in the theaters, but I didn't really know who Scorsese was. I was starting to learn that, 87, 88, 89 is when I started to go, who are these famous filmmakers? And I remember renting Taxi Driver and Mean Streets and Raging Bull, and then maybe like New York and King of Comedy and some of those other ones. And so when it came out in the theater, I went to the theater to see it, and it is an exhilarating and upsetting and high adrenaline film. It's not like you go out overwhelmed and sad. You go out sort of nervous and like, what did I go through? Like, you went through something really intense. Yeah, you see that film.
Yeah, I think that's what. That's why the film to me is very difficult to watch over and over again because of those last 30 minutes of the film. What had been so amazing to see this love of gangster, like I just have a love of seeing it on film, right? I don't ever want to be part of it. I don't want to be in a crew. No desire to do any of that. But when I see it on film, it's so well done and glamorized that when he went to the whole point of the movie which was to deconstruct this myth of the gangster, very similar to Unforgiven, he doesn't give you what Eastwood gives you at the end, which is this badass moment of ending. It's sad. It's pathetic. And his last line of it's tomato sauce in water is what they pass for. Ketchup, pasta sauce. Yeah, ketchup and water. What they pass for pasta sauce. You're just like, wow, that's terrible. You're not left with a good feeling when you leave the theater. Absolutely. I think I agree with you completely, Steve. You're left with what did I just get jerked around about for almost 2 hours and a half? Well,
but you're also left with this great feeling of elation.
Oh yeah.
In the first half, and it's so let's start. Sure. I think you gotta start with the choice to put the middle of the film at the beginning. Yeah. So let's just to back up a little bit. This is based on a true story. Yeah. There's a real guy named Henry Hill. There's really a Jimmy Conway. There's really a Paul, whatever his
Beatty. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a guy who really turned state's evidence, really went into witness protection. And Nicholas Pileggi, the reporter, he came and wrote a book about it called Wise Guys. Right. And Scorsese, Irvin Winkler optioned the book. Scorsese calls him up, Nicholas Pileggi, and says, Pileggi? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Pileggi, I think.
Yeah, and says, hi, this is Marty Scorsese. I'm a filmmaker. And Pileggi goes, I know who you are. He says, well, I want to do your film. And Pileggi goes, and you're going to do my film. This is like my dream. But Irvin Winkler has the rights. And so they had to work that out. Once they worked that out, this is the first screenplay since Mean Streets that Scorsese wrote with Pileggi. Yeah, he didn't write any of the other ones, but he really felt that the only way he could get this right was to write. So they collaborated on it. And one of the decisions they made as they're going through the book, they wrote the screenplay the first time chronologically. And, and Scorsese went, it's not right. It's not working. And
you're just retelling the book, yeah.
Yeah, and then he went, what we need to do to set the tone is take the Billy Bats in the trunk murder and put it at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And then go back in time and then work our way back to the middle of the movie where that happens. Now, I think that is such a profound filmmaking choice.
I agree.
Because it sets you up. Like, how do you feel when you see that opening moment?
Absolutely. I love it because it mirrors what we as an audience had already been conditioned to do since The Godfather, which is to love gangster epics.
Right.
So when he slams the car door and they have the still frame on him and he says,
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
you as the audience are like, I'm in.
Yep.
Because I know that feeling. Because watching it on screen, I would love to live what happens on screen, but I don't want to do it in real life. But I'm happy to live in the fantasy, and I think that's what it hooks the audience immediately. And Ray Liotta's voiceover works so well to do that. Yeah.
Well, but it's also corrupting because you've just seen a horrific image.
Absolutely.
And when they open up that trunk and you see Billy Bats, and he looks like some meat that's still moving.
Frank Vincent.
And then they drive. Joe Pesci stabs him with a big butcher knife, and they shoot. And it was like, oh my God, it's like intense violence right at the beginning.
Right.
And then you have this. All my life, I always wanted to be a gangster. Right into Rags to Riches.
Yes,
great music, and you're like, oh, I'm onto something.
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't. And the fact that they put that first corrupts or foreshadows all the joy of the next sequence.
Yeah.
Is that if you just started with All My Life I Want to Be a Gangster without seeing Billy Bats in the trunk of the car and went into this romantic view of being a gangster, I think the movie would not work very well.
I agree with you.
I mean, there's still so much genius in
Right.
it, but putting that first makes a huge difference.
Well, I agree because it works on multiple levels, right? You as an audience member, you're watching that film, you're going, okay, what I'm watching is not right. But yet these actors have such incredible force of personality, I'm immediately on their side as protagonists. But then you, just in that moment when I've seen a very horrific image, you take me to this fantastically uplifting and awesome fun song from the 40s or 50s of Tony Bennett singing Rags to Riches, which is, of course, harking back to what's going to happen to Henry Hill as he goes from rags to riches, essentially,
and back to
in
rags.
his own life story, and back to rags in his own life story, right? Exactly.
And so, and it frames this, and we should talk. Is that I think we talked about with Quentin Tarantino? He's one of the great soundtrack, music, song choice directors. Scorsese's the best.
Absolutely.
I think he's the number one. And this movie in particular, every song hits in this powerful way. And this is not easy. Yeah. Because in terms of editing, in terms of the rights to actually get all these songs, to get them all to hit just right, it's easier to do with a composer because you just say, on this cut, I want the downbeat to happen and we're going to be in 3/4 time and we're going to get to there. When you have to make a song do it, you have to fit the editing to the song and the song to the editing. It's not easy.
Well, I may be speaking out of turn here, but I think what Scorsese does really well is he finds popular songs, pop culture songs, and slides them in effectively, whereas I think Quentin does a little more of dumpster diving in his mind of songs and it introduces us to a lot of these kind of lesser-known songs that are good songs, and we put them into our lexicon of pop culture. But Scorsese has so much of a plethora because he's lived through all these decades of these songs coming out,
Yeah, and I think there's a deeper, no disrespect to Mr. Tarantino, there's a deeper thing going on with Scorsese in the complexity of the way he uses those songs.
Very well said, yes.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about voiceover, because this is a voiceover movie.
Yeah, basically.
If you listen to screenwriting teachers, and I don't really agree with this, is they will say voiceover is a sign of weak screenwriting.
Yes, I hate that. I've always hated that. It's not true.
Well, what is true is that weak screenwriters often turn to voiceover to solve their script problems.
Right.
But the problem isn't the voiceover.
Right.
The problem is your shitty screenwriting.
Right.
There are great voiceover movies, and this is among the top 5, I think. The voiceover is amazing.
Yeah.
And Scorsese does this thing that he does also in Casino, which is he is one of the most entertaining explainers of a system of any filmmaker I can think of. That opening 20 minutes of learning about how these wise guys work is awesome and entertaining and captivating.
For a guy who moved all day long, Paulie didn't talk to 6 people. If there was a union problem or, say, a beef in the numbers, then only the top guys can meet with Paulie to discuss the problem. Everything was one-on-one. Paulie hated conferences. He didn't want anybody hearing what he said, and he didn't want anybody listening to what he was being told. Hundreds of guys depended on Paulie, and he got a piece of everything they made. It was tribute, just like in the old country, except they were doing it here in America. And all they got from Paulie was protection from other guys looking to rip them off. And that's what it's all about. That's what the FBI could never understand. That what Paulie and the organization does is offer protection for people who can't go to the cops. That's it. That's all it is. They're like the police department for wise guys.
And Liotta's not in any rush to get there. I think that's what helps you. The pace of which, the way he delivers that dialogue, he makes sure that you got the first fact to move on to the next fact, to move on to the next fact. So you are connecting the dots as he's moving along. He's not going fast enough to lose you, but he's going fast enough to keep your attention and still maintain the information in your brain, which I think is so well done. And a lot of people don't recognize that because of me being a voiceover artist. I know how directors are in that booth and what they're trying to tell you to do in there so that people will grasp what you're doing.
Yeah. And he's so charming and charismatic that you really like him. Yeah. Even though what you're watching his life choices are like, oh my God, you're happily choosing to be a criminal. Yeah. Right at and to the point of coming into conflict with your father. And there's these subtle moments of this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, this is serious. Yeah. This is fun. One of the first ones being the mailman. Yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. You know, so his dad beats him up because he's not going to school. He whips him with the belt. Yeah. I grew up like that. I don't know if you did, but I certainly got the belt when I did something wrong. Yeah, there was no belt. It's purely a suspender's house. No, I did not get the belt. Wow. Or the suspenders, because those little clippy things would probably hurt a lot. Yeah, they would hurt a lot, especially on the end. Yeah. Yeah, but no, I didn't get that. And then the kid rats out the mailman, and they put the mailman's head in a pizza oven.
You know this kid? Yeah. You know where he lives? Yeah. Deliver mail to his house? Yeah. Well, from now on, any letter from that school to that kid's house comes directly here. You understand? Yeah. If another letter from that school goes to that kid's house, in the fucking oven, you're gonna go ahead first.
That was it. No more letters from truant officers, no more letters from school, in fact, no more letters from anybody.
And what's so funny is, on the one hand, you're kind of in this fantasy place of like, oh, wow, to have this kind of power. On the other hand, you're like, the poor mailman. You know, like he didn't bother anybody.
Well, I think that's what Sopranos did really, really well to correlate that to Goodfellas. Sopranos did a great job.
Well, I don't think there is Sopranos without Goodfellas.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And they quote it all the time in Sopranos. But like Sopranos does a great job of showing you how this glamorous lifestyle affects these smaller people in their lives and unfortunate victims of this lifestyle who have no business or are just doing their jobs, being regular human beings, and they get caught up in the crap that is this stuff. And the mailman is a great example. Once again, great job by Scorsese with stopping that still frame at that moment, and the voiceover of Ray Liotta saying that by that point he never delivered mail in my house again. Like 2 weeks, it got to the point that my dad or my mom had to go down to the school to get my report card. I thought that was brilliant.
Oh yeah, and the timing, everything, and you know, one of the great heroes of Martin Scorsese is Thelma Schumacher. Yes, who's the editor. Yeah. Edited I think all of his films.
Just about, yeah.
And she, you know, and I know I've said before in this podcast that I think that the relationship between the editor and the director is the most intimate one in filmmaking. Yeah. And obviously this great genius director has stuck with this great genius editor for a reason. And the precision of the music, the picture, the voiceover, the moment, the acting on screen, the camera movements is so perfect in Goodfellas. Right. And that opening sequence is a textbook.
Yeah. But it also solidifies us that Henry is a good person. Like from the Genesis. Yeah, the fact that like when he uses all the towels when that guy's been shot, like you get the sense. I don't think he sold out the mailman to save his life. I think he sold out the mailman stupidly. Like I think he innocently didn't know what he was involved in. And then when they stuck the mailman's head in the thing, it really showed him what he's in for, right? But he's still a kid, and I think he still enjoys it. But like when that guy gets his arm cut or shot, and he's using all the different aprons or whatever, towels to stop the guy from bleeding, that shows you he has a good heart. He's not necessarily a full, like how can I say this? He has a good heart, so he's not necessarily a villain in my mind. You may disagree, but in my mind, I don't think so.
I don't know.
I think he's got a good heart. He just followed a path.
Does he do certain things that are not evil? Sure. Is he rushing to cover up that guy's? Is he rushing to help him, or is he rushing to cover it up.
I think he's rushing to help him. Of course, the guy's screaming, going, "I've been shot, I've been stabbed," or whatever. Because it wasn't like Vidi or any of his friends did it. It was he just saw some guy running down the street with his arm and bloody, and so he ran out as a good person to try to wrap up his arm.
That guy's a mobster too. He's one of them.
I don't know.
It seems to imply that.
I didn't get that.
Maybe you're right. Now I have to think about whether or not he is. I mean,
this is fascinating to see the things that you get from the scenes that I get differently. I always love these moments. But yes, go ahead.
I mean, it's first of all, it's a very dramatic moment.
It is.
It's extremely violent.
Yeah.
And it's violent in this way that Scorsese is choosing to be violent in this film, which is you're going to look at it and it's going to feel very real.
Right.
You know, it's not romantic violence. It's not big action movie violence.
Right.
It's like gross and dirty and messy and screaming.
It's in your face.
It's in your face.
But I think he finds these moments throughout the film to redeem Henry in a lot of ways. When he beats up that guy for sexually assaulting Lorraine Bracco,
absolutely.
Once again, this is him solidifying. So you know that Henry has a moral compass. For better or worse, he has a moral. When he saves Morty as many times as he does before Morty actually finally gets killed, that's his moral compass. Like he's not.
You're right.
Killer.
You know what? You're right.
Tommy's the killer. Tommy's a fucking villain.
Well, Tommy's a psychopath.
Yes, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And
there are a lot of killers.
And so is De Niro to a degree, but I don't think Henry, his first impulse is to kill. In fact, I don't know if we see him kill anybody in the movie.
No, you're actually right. I'm going to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I won't go as far as say he's a good person.
No, I know not at all. No.
But I will certainly say that he has the most reluctance to, we see him, his reactions to things and his discomfort with certain ththings that happen in the movie is very clear.
Right.
And you're right. If we didn't have that in the film, this movie wouldn't work.
I agree. We would not care about him, right? I mean, we do forgive the cheating because Lorraine Bracco keeps coming back to him. So that's a personal thing. Like whatever your feelings are about him cheating on his wife and the way it's portrayed, that's your personal thing as a viewer. I don't think it's enough to make him a villain, right? But I do think that it's a negative part of his personality. But then again, that's the culture of that time.
Maybe this is a word we have to define a little bit because. Like when you say villain, it's like, okay, Hans Gruber in Die Hard is the villain.
Is a villain.
Sauron in Lord of the Rings is a villain.
Yes.
Darth Vader is the villain.
Yes.
You know, I don't know that we have villains in the real world. You know what I mean? Like
Hitler was a villain? What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is that for most of us,
people who do evil all the time.
Yeah, well, like someone whose motivation is to be bad. You know what I mean? I mean, or well, I don't know quite how to frame it. Is that
because Whitey Bulger's a villain? That's a villain.
Well, and this is why I say maybe we have to define our terms a little bit. Is that there are people that do all sorts of bad things.
Yeah.
In my mind, a villain is a movie character. You know what I mean? A story character.
Yes, okay.
He is the opposite to the hero.
Right.
We have a hero and a villain. And in the real world, most of us are just living our lives.
Yeah.
And that it's sort of more of, I'm thinking through this now as I'm saying it, but that if you were at the gates of heaven to have St. Peter weigh your good deeds and bad deeds on a scale, which side does the scale go to?
Right.
And if it tips 1% towards evil, I don't say you're a villain.
Yeah.
But I also don't say he's a good guy.
Well, that's fair.
And Henry Hill is not a good guy. He's a bad guy. There are things he does which are good or good-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, but his entire choice of life is not good.
You and I are going to have to agree to disagree on this one. But go ahead, yes.
Well, how can you say he's a good guy?
Because I think he has a moral compass. I
agree.
I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's a guy trying to survive in that business. At least what we're seeing in the film, right? I haven't read the book, so maybe in the book he does do worse things or whatever, and so maybe he's not the greatest guy, but he is a gangster. So in essence, he is a bad guy to be a gangster because he's not turning anybody in who's killing people. He's not testifying against Tommy. He's not testifying against Jimmy the Gent. He's not doing any of that.
Right, I mean, he joined the team.
Exactly.
Like once
when they bring Frank Vincent or the guys, whatever his name was, to get the shine box, whatever his character, I forget his name.
Billy Batts.
When they bring Ray Liotta's willingly participating in this whole thing.
He is reluctant. This is where I agree with you. Is that the moment that Jimmy and Tommy start beating him up,
right?
Ray Liotta's not happy about that.
Right.
But he continues to participate. He doesn't sell him out. Well, and this is really key to the movie, I think, which is why I'm glad we're having this conversation, is that the movie is very much about loyalty and establishing a code of honor. Is that there is a code of honor. It's established very early in the movie, which is you give Paulie a piece.
Yeah.
Like that's he says it. Jimmy did the right thing. He gave Paulie a piece. And this is how this system works. And when he first when young Ray Liotta, and by the way, the casting of young Ray Liotta and young Tommy is like
so perfect.
Perfect.
Henry.
Yeah.
I love he says it with a D. There's no D in Henry, but young Tommy puts it in there.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And the first thing that happens, he's out selling cigarettes out the back of a truck. He gets popped by the police.
Congratulations. Here's your graduation present.
Listen, what for? I got pinched.
Everybody gets pinched, but you did it right. You told them nothing, and they got nothing.
I thought you'd be mad.
Man, I'm not mad. I'm proud of you. You took your first pinch like a man, and you learned the two greatest things in life.
What?
Look at me. Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Hey, here he is.
Oh, you broke your cherry.
And so they establish really early, like, this is the moral code.
Yeah.
You do not rat anybody out. And, of
Right.
course, what does the movie end up being?
Yeah.
Is
There's a series of everybody ratting everybody else out.
right, until his final corruption is, in fact, doing the right thing at the end of the movie, which is to rat everybody out.
Okay.
You know? I mean, so there is a moral code. My point is that you're right. There is a moral code. That
I don't know
we're
if he did the
struggling
right
with.
thing, but okay, yeah. I mean, he saved himself. He saved himself. And that's the thing that's interesting too about this, Steve.
Well,
is 'cause-
maybe this is the problem, though. Maybe this is our issue, is that the right thing within the context of being the gangster is, you're correct, is not to do that.
Right.
But the right thing in terms of our society is to not help the fucking gangsters. They are bad guys and murderers, and to put them in jail is the right thing.
Yeah, but once you are participatory of it, then you don't get any points for finally doing the right thing after being a witness to so many bad things. At least
I
in my
agree.
mind, I don't think he gets
No, I don't
points
think.
for it.
I'm not giving him points.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, you
saying
said he does the right thing.
it
at
is
the
the
end.
right thing.
Okay.
But I just give him no points.
I'm sure you
because he's a scumbag.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
What's really
It is
weird, by
right
the
thing.
way, we should point out, Henry Hill died in 2012, I think.
Yes, recently.
And if you look, there are interviews with him. You could go see this guy talking. And it's funny because I watched some of the behind the scenes after watching the movie again. And there's interviews. There's Henry Hill. And he's talking about, the movie's very accurate. And we did this. And this is why we did this. And I hated that guy so much.
Well, and Steve, this is a good point you bring up because this novel and this film,
Not a novel.
Oh, well,
This is
it's a book.
nonfiction.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
nonfiction.
that's key.
I'm sorry, this his nonfiction book, and this movie is told through Henry's eyes.
Yeah.
So Henry is manipulating the whole thing to
course.
make us see him as a guy who was a good
started to say
guy.
villain there.
Yeah, I almost did. As a good guy who caught up in the life,
Right.
and that's complete and utter horseshit in my opinion. So, but I accept the movie separately from the book, separately from the character. It's a movie, so I enjoy the movie for that reason alone. But in my mind, you have to factor that in, that it's being told from Henry's point of view.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we don't see Jimmy, all the good things that Jimmy probably might have done on the side. We don't see, and if Tommy did any good things. Like, there's not a lot of good shown with Tommy and Jimmy to balance their characters out, but there's a lot shown with Henry because it's told from his point of view.
Well, let's talk about them for a
Yeah.
sec, because the first big characters we meet are Jimmy and Tommy, and Jimmy is introduced fairly early as made maybe to look slightly younger Robert De Niro when we first meet him, and it's interesting. We got to talk about Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese
Yeah.
because this is one of the great actor-director collaborations in the history of film.
Yeah.
And I think it's this and then Cape Fear, and then they've never worked together since, right?
DiCaprio stepped in for some unknown
Yeah.
reason. Yeah.
And man, De Niro and Scorsese, there's something that happens when those two work together.
Oh, yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And his character, if you look at him in Mean Streets, you look at him in Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, you could look at him in New York too.
Yeah.
And then you look at him in this, they're all different. Mm-hmm. They're really, or King of Comedy.
Yeah.
They're all really, really different. And you see the range of this guy. And it's interesting seeing De Niro come in this movie as not exactly the elder statesman.
He kind of is, though.
But the adult,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And the charisma with which he walks into that space when we have young Tommy and young Jimmy
Right.
is amazing. Or young Henry, I mean.
He's guiding them both. Even in that scene where Pesci shoots Spider and kills Spider.
yeah.
Jimmy's like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong?"
Right.
I was giving him like, why would you kill him? That's the thing that's the difference. He is the elder statesman in the relationship with Tommy and Henry. He is the elder statesman trying to guide them, but he knows he needs them to make the money they're making. They work well together as a threesome.
Absolutely. And what's so strange about Jimmy is that as the film goes on, like when you meet him, you're like, this is a solid guy.
He's awesome.
And
Yeah.
then as the film goes on, Jimmy does more and more things where you go, hold on.
Yeah.
I thought we could trust this guy. I thought he was kind of our partner.
Yeah.
And now you go, oh, he's as scary and maybe scarier than Tommy.
Yes, he is scarier than Tommy because Tommy can't control himself.
Yeah.
Whereas Jimmy knows exactly what he's doing. When he is stomping, and it's one of my favorite things, and I imitate it all the time whenever De Niro, that shot from below where they're stomping on Billy Batts' face, it's De Niro who is cocking his foot before he slams it down. That's the difference. Tommy is just kicking.
Right.
De Niro cocks his foot. That's a measured response. That's a thoughtful movement. And that means he is effective in his movements. He knows what he's doing. He takes that extra moment to decide what the right thing to do is in his mind, and he does it. Whereas Tommy's just like, I'm losing control. And there's the difference.
Well, and I think we need to deconstruct this moment even further because I think you're totally right. But to set it up, we need to introduce Tommy.
Yeah. Sure.
So Tommy, Joe Pesci.
So good.
He is one of those actors who is just, man, there's Joe Pesci. And so good, but between like Lethal Weapon, Raging Bull Joe Pesci,
right,
and this character I think is the greatest he ever played.
Oh, absolutely.
And he is so scary because he is a complete psychopath or sociopath, and you just like, why is this guy around? His temper, his violence, his complete lack of morals or connection to other humans is really, really scary. And of course, the key scene to the really scariness is you think I'm a clown?
Yeah.
Really funny. Really funny. What do you mean I'm funny? It's funny, you know. It's a good story. It's funny. You're a funny guy. What do you mean? You mean the way I talk? What? It's just, you know, you're just funny. It's funny, you know, the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how? I mean, what's funny about it?
Tommy, no, you got it all wrong.
Oh, Anthony. He's a big boy. He knows what he said. What'd you say?
You're right.
Funny how? What?
Just, you know, you're funny.
You mean, well, let me understand this, because maybe it's me, I'm a little fucked up, maybe. But I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you? I make you laugh? I'm here to fucking amuse you? What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny?
No, just, you know how you tell a story. What?
No, I don't know. You said it. How do I know? You said I'm funny. How the fuck am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me? Tell me. Tell me what's funny.
Get the fuck out of here, Tommy.
You motherfucker! I almost had him!
And that scene, and it's one of course, the most famous ones. In it, Joe Pesci is doing this act about, do I amuse you?
Yeah.
And it gets really genuinely scary.
Yes, it does. And the rumor, which I don't know if you've done it in the research, it had it verified, is that Scorsese told Pesci to improv this whole scene and put two cameras to show.
No, so that's not exactly what it is.
So tell me what it is.
Here's what it is that, first of all, this is a story that happened to Joe Pesci.
Right.
Where
in real life.
Yeah, where he was Ray Liotta.
Oh,
and
how
another
funny.
guy went off and said, oh, do I amuse you?
Yeah.
And scared Pesci, and then it ended up as a joke. He tells Scorsese this story. Scorsese says, we got to put it in the movie.
Yeah.
They had a long rehearsal process, and during the rehearsal process, they did a lot of improv. And one of the techniques that Scorsese used, which I've actually used too in plays that I did, is he recorded the improvs and then wrote script. So that this came out of improvs they did in rehearsal.
Okay.
But once they got on the set, it's really scripted.
Right.
And Pesci will say too, it's like that for the most part, it's really hard to improvise complicated scenes on camera. It's just not a thing that's easy to do. So it wasn't improv. It came from improv, but it wasn't improv on the set.
Right.
And the thing that's so important about that scene is the opposite of the spider scene or of the Billy Batts scene, because here is Joe Pesci looking like he's going crazy, but he really isn't.
Yeah.
And in these other scenes, it's where you think that Joe Pesci is joking, but he really isn't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I want to talk about Spider.
Yeah.
Because this is another big turning point in the movie that's really upsetting.
Yeah.
So Spider is the young kind of teenage waiter in one of the clubs, and he's kind of awkward, and he is getting some shit from Tommy from not delivering a drink, and Tommy's just fucking with him and horrible to him.
Yeah.
And then he says, hey, let's dance like those Western movies. And he starts shooting at his feet, and he shoots Spider in the foot. Right. That's the first one.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck? And the reactions from Henry and from Jimmy is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
And then we get the second Spider scene. And it is a really upsetting scene. Spider, now limping, with a big bandage on his foot, delivers Tommy the drink. Tommy starts to give him shit.
Yeah.
And Spider kind of softly goes, "Go fuck yourself."
Well, encouraged by Jimmy.
Yeah.
Right? This is the thing. Jimmy encourages
Oh, you're
him.
right. He goes, "Are you going to let him talk to you
gonna
that
talk
way?"
to you like that? And he's being playful. He's playing ball busting. But Tommy doesn't know. Tommy's embarrassed in front of, and this is how a psychopath thinks. You're singling me out, or a sociopath, you're singling me out, and you're embarrassing me in front of other people.
Right.
You think you're better than me. That brings out that anger in that moment. And so well played by Michael Imperioli, who plays Christopher Moltisanti in The Sopranos later. But yeah, what a powerful moment when Pesci does it. And Jimmy's reaction is he's so angry.
Well, if you watch, in the moment, Jimmy's encouraging Tommy. He's saying, "You gonna let him talk to you that? Come on.
He's being
and then,
playful.
And then Tommy pulls out a gun, shoots him 3 times in the chest. And the shot in the moment before he fires that gun, where you're just kind of looking at Pesci's face, is this kind of stony. And it is a really, again, we talk about this the turning points in this film, where you go, "Oh, this isn't fun."
Yeah.
You know, I was having fun a half an hour ago.
Right.
This all seemed great. This is not. They just killed this kid.
Right.
It's horrible.
Even when he shoots
thing.
him in the foot in the first scene to set up the second scene, you're like, "Oh, man, what's wrong with you?" You know, you kind of excuse it a little bit because you're like, "Oh, this guy just lost," and he shot him in the foot. He didn't kill him. He shot him in the foot. When he kills him, you're right, Steve. That's where you see the full age of Joe Pesci as an actual human being, and the loss of emotion in that moment. And there's not even anger. It's a feeling beyond anger that he knows he's going to kill this guy, and he does it. And it's just like, whoa.
Well, and the reactions of the group.
Yeah.
While they are, "What the fuck are you doing?" Why are they? In the end, they're like, "Okay, I guess we got to go clean this up."
Yeah, we got to
do it."
wrap him in a carpet. Blah blah blah. Yeah.
You see, when my friends shoot somebody in front of me, I end the friendship. I go, "I think we're done now."
Well, unless you've been encouraging the situation, then maybe you take some responsibility.
I suppose you're right. I probably shouldn't encourage people to shoot people, but it's just like they just go, "Oh, this is what we have to do."
Yeah.
And this is why we go to. This is why I go to. They're all bad guys, because at a certain point you hang out with the sociopath long enough,
right?
While he kills multiple people.
What do they say? If you lay with dogs, you wake up with fleas. Don't complain.
Yeah. I mean, these are bad guys.
Yeah.
And it really sets it up. And so what we set up is by the time we get to the scene with Billy Batts, which is some other made guy who comes out of prison, it seems like, and he knew Tommy when he was young, and now he's giving him shit. And he's busting his balls, to use the term they use.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you all my life.
All right, good.
You're getting too big on me
Just
now.
don't go busting my balls, Billy, okay?
Hey, Tommy, if I was gonna break your balls, I'd tell you to go home and get your shine box.
It escalates, and then there's a moment of peacemaking, and then Billy Batts goes further.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
Motherfucking you fucking piece of shit!
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
And they start to tussle, and then Tommy says, "Hey, keep him around here," which I guess they do.
Yeah.
And then when everybody's out of the club, Tommy attacks him. And this is why it's so interesting, because you see the 3 characters, Ray Liotta, De Niro, and Pesci.
Yeah.
Pesci, apeshit crazy.
Yes.
De Niro, as you describe, is consciously doing what he's doing. And I'm going like, why?
Yeah.
Because he knows how dangerous what they're doing is.
Right. But which we find out later when they kill Pesci. By the way, maybe we should say, if you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing listening to this? Go see the movie and then come back and pick up.
Yeah, we've already spoiled a bunch of stuff.
It's true.
And this is just going to be more.
But when Pesci dies, De Niro's reaction, or they killed Pesci, De Niro's reaction, and then Liotta's voiceover. It was a Sicilian thing. It was between the Italians because Jimmy is half Irish, therefore not fully part of it. So so is Henry.
And
so is Henry, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they don't they don't fully get what it's like to kill a made man. They don't get it fully, and I think that's why they're okay with it, or they go along with it.
I think they get it.
Well, then why would they do it? It doesn't make any sense.
But this is
why would De Niro do it? Because it signs his death warrant.
But that's what's weird about the scene. Clearly, Henry says it because in the voiceover, like right after that scene, he says this is a made man.
Yeah, but he's doing it as a retrospective thing, not an in the moment thing. And I think that's the difference.
How could you grow up in this world and literally around it all the time, and not know this kid. And
it's a good point. It's a good point, Stephen. You may absolutely be right. In my mind, I rationalize it by saying because they're not fully in. Because Jimmy could never be a made man, therefore he doesn't like understand like Pesci would have access to what it's like to understand the made man status and the specificity of it. Maybe Jimmy doesn't or never had. Therefore, he thought they could get away with it. Like he thought they could hide it under. No one would really care. He's a lower guy on the totem pole. Maybe in his mind they could get away with this murder because Pesci is doing it, who is a full Sicilian, not Jimmy. Like Pesci is the focus of the murder.
Maybe. And by the way,
but I could be wrong.
This is
totally
not.
wrong.
Sometimes we'll nitpick a moment because maybe I think that that's hurting the film. That's not what I think of this. I'm not questioning it because I think this is poor filmmaking. I'm questioning it because I go, it doesn't make sense. But because this is key with Jimmy's character. This is the moment. I mean, this is the turning point of the film, first of all. But because and we're now back at that trunk of the car, which is where we started the film. So it's a really key moment.
Yeah.
But this is the moment where you stop trusting Jimmy.
Yeah.
And you trust him less and less and less as it goes on. Because we thought it was super responsible Jimmy, young guy trying to do the right thing within the context of being a gangster, Henry Hill, and psychopath Tommy.
Right.
But when Jimmy just immediately jumps on that guy and helps kill him, it's like, where can I be that I can feel safe? And the answer is, of course, nowhere. You can't feel safe in this movie. And as it goes on, less and less.
And that's fantastic point you make, Steve. And absolutely, you trust him less and less starting from that moment. It's a great. My thing is that I think these three have rebellious streaks in their nature. Throughout them, and which is what I think brought them together. There's an understanding or a connection that happens that's unspoken. When you meet somebody, you just sense they're just like you, or they have enough of you in them that you can feel a connection, understand that person, and you become fast friends with that person. I think that's what happens here. The fact that Henry Hill later on is selling drugs behind Vidi's back when he shouldn't be doing that. Jimmy with the killing of bats, and then Tommy who's just randomly killing because he thinks he can. Even when it's not necessary. These are the things that they have within themselves, and it makes them an interesting threesome and a great characters to watch on screen, but ultimately doomed characters.
Well, and this is why I think that their self-interest is aligned at the beginning of the film.
Yes.
And that as time goes on, for various reasons, their self-interest ceases to be aligned. Yeah. And this is why this question of, and I think it's the key and why we probably argued about it, is Henry Hill a good guy?
Yeah.
Or is he just a good guy when his self-interest is aligned with what the system of morality he's entered into is?
Mm-hmm.
And
valid point, man.
And it's complicated to assess out, how this works.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Paul Sorvino.
Yes, please.
He says almost nothing.
which they talk about in the film.
And he just steals it.
Yeah.
And something you should know, Paul Sorvino is nothing like this guy.
No.
He's a trained opera singer. He is intellectual and artistic.
He's goofy. If you see him in interviews, very goofy.
He's funny and smart and will quote poetry at you. And he just it's as indelible a mob boss as Brando to me.
Yeah.
With much less. He just kind of is there. And a lot of that is Sorvino, and a lot of that is direction.
Yeah.
It's just where you're putting the camera. Like you put a camera and you put a lot of chaos going on around a silent person. What are we looking at? That silent person. And they take on weight, not just physical weight, but emotional and profound, veritas.
Yeah.
His performance is great. And in the upcoming betrayals of him that Henry Hill's going to do, you feel really bad for him.
He's a Papa Bear. Yeah. He's the Papa Bear of the clan. Right?
Yeah.
He like this says, he never uses the phone. He makes his poor brother run back and forth in the rain. He never has to do anything. And he moves slowly because he doesn't need to move at all.
Right.
And so people come to him. And so when the betrayal happens to him, you feel for him because he's put it out on the line for Henry. He's helped Henry. And Henry's got himself into his own situation, a bad situation, and Vidi can't help him. I think it's Vidi, right? Or am I thinking Paul Vidi from Analyze This? I'm sorry, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I can't remember now. It's Paul Cicero or Paul?
Oh, is it Cicero?
Starts with a C, I think.
So for everybody who's been listening, I apologize. You can stop yelling at me. I made the mistake. It's you can get angry at me if you like, but he moves.
Please get angry at John. He really needs to be scolded on Twitter. as often as possible.
Paul Cicero, yes, you're
Cicero.
right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking Paul Beatty from Analyze This. So anyway,
No, we're going to make so many mistakes in the Cine-Files. We've already made a bunch, and we appreciate when you call them on them. I'll probably say 9 wrong things in the course
I'm just going to say it as wild. Paul Beatty. That way we can use that and put that in replace so I don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
But
should I go through and now say Paul Cicero?
oh, Paul Cicero, right. Paul Cicero. Yeah,
now
just
I'll
put
go
that
through
in.
and edit in every time. Oh, that'd be funny.
But this is he's such a magnetic character, and it's a great use of Sorvino's face. He's one of these amazing characters in cinema as an actor and as a personality. You see him in so many different, like in Romeo and Juliet. He's a completely.
Sure.
I think that's the most fully realized Paul Sorvino you'll ever see is in Romeo and Juliet. Whereas in this, he's just this monolith who moves amongst everyone else. You know, this rock monolith just kind of slowly moves through everything. You know,
And he feels to have a moral center.
Yes.
And so when Henry Hill's marriage is in trouble and he comes and he says, you got to make this right.
I'm not saying you got to go back there this minute, but you got to go back. I mean, it's the only way. Got to keep up appearances.
Yeah, but I got the two of them coming over the house every day, commiserating the two of them. I can't have it. You have to do the right thing. You have to go home to the family, you understand? You gotta go home, okay? Look at me, all right?
All right. I'm going to talk to Karen. I'll straighten this thing out. I know just what to say to her. Okay? I'm going to tell her you're going to go back to her, and everything's going to be just the way it was when you were first married. I'm going to romance. It's going to be beautiful. I know how to talk to her, especially to her.
Now, there is certainly self-interest in the way he's saying, I can't have this.
Right.
But you also feel the moral power of Paul Sorvino, which is really important.
And you need that.
And you feel when they start betraying him, which they do in multiple ways, like, oh, they're breaking the code. You told me what the code was at the beginning, and now you're breaking it.
You're right, because they're not satisfied with what is going on. They're trying to angle, because they're hustlers. Those 3 of them are hustlers. They're constantly angling for their pieces of the pie. And when they pull off the Lufthansa heist, that's where they think they're set. But unfortunately, it exposes their really horrible traits. Both Tommy and Jimmy are exposed off that heist. Henry not so much, but certainly Tommy and Jimmy, and that's when, to me, you can connect the Billy Bats thing to the Lufthansa thing, and that's when Jimmy is absolutely a terrible, like a horrible villain, horrible character.
So to be clear, we're now 2/3 of the way through the movie. This is the biggest heist of the movie. It's a real story.
Yes,
$5 million or so that was stolen, and Jimmy has told everyone, which seems responsible, don't spend any of your money.
Right,
and in walks a guy with his girlfriend in a beautiful new pink Cadillac.
Are you stupid or what? Did you hear what I said? Don't buy anything, don't get anything, nothing big. Did you hear what I said? What's the matter with you? What are you getting excited for? What am I getting excited about? Because you're gonna get us all fucking pinched, that's why. What are you, stupid? What's the matter with you?
I apologize.
What's the matter with you?
Sorry.
What the fuck is the matter with you?
I don't understand.
What'd you say? Are you being a fucking wise guy with me? Huh?
I'm sorry.
What did I tell you?
I apologize.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you? You don't buy anything, you hear me? Don't buy anything.
Hey, this is where you just kind of imagine.
I love it.
Can you imagine De Niro being pissed at you?
Yeah.
Fucking terrifying.
No thanks, man.
And
No
by the way,
thanks.
this is another scene that came out of the improv. And this is one that maybe was improv on a set a little bit of just like, what were you thinking? I'm sorry. I apologize. Like that scene is terrifying.
Yeah.
And then someone else comes in with a mink coat.
Yeah.
And then you have Morty.
And Morty constantly bitching where his piece of the
where
pie
his money is. And so on the one hand, you feel like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Jimmy's being responsible.
Right.
But then what they do essentially is kill everybody who is involved in this heist.
All the
and you
witnesses.
go like, and this is where your moral or tactical choices are like, well, this is just your self-interest.
Yeah.
Because it's really just you want all the money.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
Including, by the way, killing Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
Who's a very small part in the film.
A cameo,
Yeah, he is this great. I know we talked about him before, but he's a working actor for a really long time
before he blew up.
Before he finally hit.
Well, and this is important, Steve. I think we should stop for a second and just highlight. Scorsese does such a great, because this is about analyzing the whole film and talk. Scorsese does such a great job of casting and creating these characters within the film that have like small parts, but they are so memorable. To this day, I will never forget Jimmy 2 times. I will never forget him. I will never forget Frankie Beaumont, who gets hung up in the ice truck with the big hair.
He's got that hair.
Yeah, these characters are so well, and the cast is so well done that they're memorable to you all the way through the film because of their personality. Just a great job by the casting people and Scorsese.
Yeah, it's hugely important because that world feels real.
Yes, authentic as hell, no matter where they're at.
And this is something we haven't said a lot about Scorsese, but he grew up around this world, not in this world.
Right.
You know, but he definitely knew these kinds of people on the street in a real way.
Yeah.
In the low level people, in the way that, going back to Coppola, that he did not.
Right.
Like Coppola wasn't hanging out with the Godfather, but Scorsese really was around people that
These
were running
gangsters.
numbers and small time.
Yeah. Well, it's like John Singleton in Boys in the Hood. He knows that. He grew up around that. That's why it was so authentic, that film. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a different thing of there are people, I really reject the idea that you have to write out of your own experience. I think that it is possible. There are all sorts of great writers who write great stories that had nothing to do with any way they grew up. You know, it's like from Lawrence of Arabia. None of those people were in that era.
Yeah,
or you know what I mean?
That's true. That's very true.
Blade Runner. None of us have been in the future, and
true.
Sunny Down. It's like there are all sorts of great movies that were written by people that didn't have that experience. But to make Goodfellas or Mean Streets, you have to have been in that experience.
I agree with you completely.
Or Boys in the Hood, as you said, or Do the Right Thing, or there are movies where the reality of the personal experience is coming through like crazy. Yeah. So speaking of casting, Lorraine Bracco.
Yes, let's talk about her.
Yeah. So and this is really interesting. So again, we go back to our rules of screenwriting. Basic screenwriting thing they tell young writers is, who is the movie about? The movie has to be about one person.
Yeah.
Only can have one point of view, which is not true. There are a lot of movies that are two-handers or ensembles. But one thing that's you've almost never seen in film is a movie that has 35, 40 minutes of voiceover from a particular character.
Yeah.
And then you hear voiceover from a new character.
Yeah.
Joe, come have the check.
Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I gotta go.
I couldn't stand him. I thought he was really obnoxious. He kept fidgeting around.
Which was so good.
Almost never done. And it does, because you mentioned before how we don't really see things from a different perspective with Jimmy and Tommy, but you do see things from Karen's perspective.
Yeah.
No question about it.
But it's very judgmental. It's very judgmental of the life because she's walking into the life from a completely different place. She's Jewish. She's walking into the life from a completely different place, seeing, and once again, it is again deconstructing this myth of this lifestyle and really exposing the underbelly and the ugly underbelly of the lifestyle. You know, when they're I love when she's talking about hanging out with the other wives in slow-mo, and you just see like this is not anything I would want to be a part of. You know, and the pathetic nature of it to a degree. Now, these women are probably not in pathetic situations that they're aware of, but to her, it does look pathetic to live that kind of life, to be basically a taken woman, and she essentially, against knowing it, without knowing it, becomes that as the film progresses, which is why she pulls a gun on Henry when she finds out that he's had this affair with this mistress for so long.
But because she is, in her own words, turned on by it.
Yes.
And it's funny because I think she, in a lot of ways, is us as the audience.
Yeah.
And is pointing out exactly what we've been experiencing through the first half of the film.
Yeah.
In the first half of the film, you are being seduced by being a gangster.
Yeah.
You are looking, and even though you see some violence, you see a mailman, his head put in an oven, you see the guy shot, you see cars blown up, you see these things happening, but you are still with, all my life I wanted to be a gangster.
Yeah.
You're still there going, this is cool.
Yep.
And when she meets him, and he takes her into the Copacabana, and we got to talk about that shot.
Yeah, great tracking shot, yeah.
Is that you are with her. And the moment that you brought up earlier, she got assaulted by this guy across the street, and Henry Hill comes up like the avenging fucking angel and beats the shit out of that guy.
Yep.
And she watches, and we watch, and we go, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Because once again, the casting of that guy is so well done, despicably slicky, just a slick, disgusting guy, and it works, right? And he hands her the gun.
Here, hide this. Are you all right? Are you all right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. I know there are women like my best friends who would have gotten out of there the minute their boyfriend gave them a gun to hide. But I didn't. I gotta admit the truth. It turned me on.
But the truth is, it turned me on.
It turned me on, right? And I have to admit that. And that's sometimes the thing, man.
Well, and this is the thing about this movie is this movie must seduce you first.
Yeah.
And it seduces Karen's character against her better judgment.
Right.
She knows this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
From that moment. I mean, she knows he's a gangster.
Yeah.
When so let's talk about the Copacabana shot. So
yes, go ahead.
So there are 5 or 6 shots in the history of filmmaking that are tracking shots, and that means a long progressive shot with a lot of movement that people talk about.
Right.
We talked about Touch of Evil. There are 2 amazing tracking shots.
The opening shot, yes.
The opening shot and the one in the apartment is an amazing shot. There's films like The Player. There's Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. There's a lot of fantastic tracking shots in film. And this is one of the big ones. So we start on the outside parking a car, and with a steady cam shot, we follow Karen and Henry into the back door of the Copacabana, passing a long line of people that are waiting to go in. We go down into the kitchen. We walk through the maze of the kitchen, and on each moment, Henry Hill is passing off $20 here and $20 there and $20 there.
Great.
They go upstairs back into the Copacabana. The maitre d' flags over waiters who fly a table in. They follow a table flying through the club until it's dropped directly in front of the stage, where other waiters come up and put the little lamp on and light the lamp, and someone else comes up with a bottle of wine, and it's all in one shot until we see Henny Youngman saying, "Take my wife, please."
Right.
And it is a remarkable shot in terms of its technique.
But once again, the song that's being played is I think it's Bobby Vinton or whatever.
Bobby Vinton.
Yeah, it's playing over there. Yeah, go ahead.
And it is... and a lot of people talk about it for its technical reasons, and this is really hard.
Yeah.
By the way, they did 8 takes, and they finished the day early.
Wow.
Which is surprising, because it's so complex. Because whenever you're doing a tracking shot like that, first of all, with this one, they're writing. You always have to write focus.
Yeah.
So the distance of the performers from the camera, there needs to be someone pulling focus, which means they're on a little knob.
Yeah.
And if they're 3 feet away, they turn the knob to 3 feet. And if they're 6 feet away, they turn it to 6. And if they're 2 feet away, they turn it to 2. And you have to be writing that in real time as you're walking through the space, which is really hard. They're also writing exposure, which is even harder, which is another knob because it's too bright outside and darker and then brighter again, which is really hard. And you're recording sound, so you have a sound guy who's following with a boom mic, and there's a lot of and you have all these actors who have to hit their spots exactly right. So technically, we talk about it a lot in film school and filmmakers, and a lot of people say, "Man, I want to do a shot like that." And what always bugs me is they don't ask the question, why do you want to do a shot like that?
Yeah.
What's the story point? And in this movie, there is a story reason why they want to do that all in one shot.
Yeah.
And it's because it gives you this feeling of breaking the rules and going through this space and being treated like a king and placed in this perfect spot. And if you'd done it in cuts, you could have done it in a whole bunch of shots. It would not have given you the feeling.
No. You feel like you're with them. You feel like you're walking right behind Karen. You feel like you're walking right behind Karen. And once again, this is one of these things that he does to make Henry an interesting, attractive character.
It's absolutely
because
attractive.
you are caught up with the amazing nature of it all, because who doesn't want to feel that powerful? Who doesn't want to feel that taken care of? Who doesn't want to feel that cool? You know, it appeals to you as an audience.
And I want to skip the fucking lines.
Of course.
And I want to have the best seat.
I want to pull a table out and put it in front of us. This guy's that important.
Yeah.
More important than any of you guys. We're putting a special table out here in front.
And wouldn't it be nice to have thousands of dollars to just be handing out 20s to everyone you walk by?
Sure.
I had to digress just for a moment. So one thing I was thinking about watching it this time, and I don't mean to make this a Jewish thing.
Okay.
Or to make a Jewish stereotype. I am a Jewish person.
Absolutely.
And I watch him throwing away that money, and I go, "What are you doing?" Because I'm so.
But he's not throwing away the money.
Yes, he is.
No, he's tipping the people out of respect to them for what they're doing for him.
Yeah, but don't do that.
Why not?
Because then you have to do another job and you'll go to jail.
But that's life. That's the life he's chosen.
But that's a terrible choice.
Well,
that's why I keep watching. It's like, and this is, I come from a family of, I don't think I'm cheap. I don't think my family is particularly cheap.
Wow, you're leaning into the stereotype.
I know, that's why I'm a little nervous about bringing this up. But I was trained, this is how you handle money.
Yeah.
And if money comes in, if you have a windfall, then you take care of that money and you put it in a place. And you make sure to monitor it, because you don't know when you're going to have another windfall.
Right.
You save for a rainy day, and that is what's being responsible. So watching this spending, I was like, well, when you had the first giant 400,000 job, you should have been set up. And after the Lufthansa job, it's $5 billion.
But these people don't do this to have retirement plans.
Because they're fucking idiots.
That's right. Well, it's not like gangsters are fucking Mensa students.
Well, obviously, but that's why I just said. But that's why,
shit! Don't shoot me! Don't anybody's listening to this. If your family's in a gang, please don't kill me. Please don't. I'm just saying that we don't know that they're normally Mensa students. Oh, I'm gonna get killed.
We did say that Tommy was a psychopath.
Yes.
I mean, we have not said nice things about gangsters.
I'm sorry.
We apologize to the gangster community
that's listening to us right now. Please don't kill me.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead. Yes.
But it's just like I sit there and go, man, if you had managed your money, you wouldn't have to have these horrible things happen to you. That's all. Anyway, okay. Digression over. I know it's not part of the film.
But this is, I think their relationship is so it's what sets this film apart.
Yeah.
You know, we don't see, not until Sopranos came out, we don't see this kind of relationship in any other film, right? I mean, Diane Keaton is pretty much a nagging shrill through the whole first two movies, right? She's marginalized, she's dismissed, she's not really given equal footing. No matter what anyone says, I will argue this the day I die, she's not given equal footing to Michael Corleone. She isn't.
Of course not.
But
who argues that point?
Well, some people might, and Diane Keaton might herself, which I respect if she did.
Look, I love Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
And if you want to come on the show to discuss your character in Godfather, you're welcome to.
Absolutely. But what we see with Lorraine Bracco is she although she is smitten with it, and there is that scene where she gives him a blowjob for the money, you know, to give the money, and there is a part of her that rebels against the constraints or what's expected of her as the wife of a gangster.
Oh yeah, she doesn't fit in with that crowd.
Right, and this is what I like about her. Like, she confronts him when they're at the prison and starts pulling out the stuff that she's bringing illegally to him, that they're turning a blind eye to fuck with him. She visits the mistress's apartment and starts slamming on the bells to call her a whore, which is what sometimes some women have done. Obviously, through the history of mankind have done that kind of stuff.
Bringing the kids. I know it's the bringing the kids.
Yeah, it's the bringing the kids. Right, it's the witness.
Because what you're doing is you're abusing the children.
You really are.
Like, that's what's so horrible watching.
You're showing the really ugly aspects of a relationship or of love. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is, it's like, oh, hi, therapy.
Yeah.
Welcome to the rest of your life.
Right.
And
it all culminates in her pulling the gun on Henry and straddling him, which I think is a very sexy scene.
It is.
But just the colors and the costuming, which is so, and we should touch on that. Definitely give credit to the costuming that they do to evoke the era, the cinematography, all that really does put you in the era of whatever era they're in, decade they're in. It really does put you in there. And I think that scene in 70s, obviously she's rolling on top of him. She has that gun, the way her hair is, everything, just waking up to it. But then his reaction is so powerful too. Like,
Karen, I love you. You know I love you. Karen. Karen, please be careful. Baby, don't.
But still, I couldn't hurt him. How could I hurt him? I couldn't even bring myself to leave him. The truth was that no matter how bad I felt, I was still very attracted to him. Why should I give him to someone else? Why should she win?
Karen, just put it down. You know I love you, don't you? Please put the gun down, Karen. Baby.
What, are you fucking crazy, Karen? Are you crazy? Huh? I got enough to worry about getting fucking whacked on the street. I gotta fucking come home. I gotta fucking come home for this.
I ain't got enough to deal with. I got to come home to this. It's all so
it's
much.
Great. So to set up what the scene is, this is where he's having affairs.
Yeah.
And she has tried and she's accused him and she's confronted him.
Right.
She's confronted the mistress and nothing's happened. So one morning, Henry Hill wakes up to a revolver inches from his face, the hammer pulled back, her finger on the trigger, and she's right on the verge of killing him. Right. And there's no question in my mind that he's really close to death in that scene. It's not like it's not like, oh, she doesn't have the guts to do it.
Right.
She is debating doing it, and one little crying tremor, and she's pulling that trigger.
Right.
And we should talk about what the filmmaking is, because it's always interesting to picture how is that shot.
Right.
Well, she's not on Henry Hill.
Right.
She's on the cameraman.
Oh, right, exactly.
Michael, I think it's Michael Balhaus.
Okay.
Is his name. So she's straddling the cameraman. She has a camera. The gun is not pointed at his face.
Right.
The gun is pointed directly at the lens of the camera. And she is talking into the camera. Her eye, normally we call it eyeball the lens or eyeballing the camera.
Yes.
We rarely do that. We look just off to one side. But here she's looking right down the barrel of the lens, which means she's looking into her own reflection.
Yeah.
And Ray Liotta is in the room, but he's off to the side somewhere, throwing lines at her. And when you do the opposite of that shot, you have Ray Liotta lying in bed with the cameraman straddling him, not Lorraine Bracco, and he is looking directly into a lens.
Yes.
And that's a really hard way to act.
I'm sure. Yes, it is.
Really hard. And the intensity and the passion and the honesty in both of their performances is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the way Ray Liotta gets her off him is violent and brutal and scary.
It is initially calming and then violent and brutal and scary because he is capable of that. He does slap her, right? But he could go further and he doesn't in that moment. Because once again, I think there's a piece of him that understands the moral compass of the situation. He knows he's doing wrong to her.
And he does care about her.
Yeah, of course he loves her. I think he loves her as much as he can love anyone. He does love her. And I think she loves him too. And this is something that, to digress myself a little bit, I've had a number of friends over the last 10 years who've gone through divorces who have kids. And they've tried to stay in situations with men who are abusive to them, either verbally or physically or cheating on them, because they've chosen to have children with this man, and it's really hard for them to leave the situation. And so to me, she's very relatable and understandable, and I get it. You know, it's not just about her being attracted to the lifestyle. There's more involved now once you have kids, once you share a life. The separation is so difficult, and a lot of women, or a lot of men too, like just have a really hard time with a divorce or with a separation. So you get it, you know, and she's so great in the movie. Lorraine Bracco is so fantastic in the movie, this character, giving her so many layers and depth that we can gravitate to and understand. You know?
Yeah, she has so much range because there's scenes where you go, oh, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Like in the scene where she confronts him after he
dumps her or stands her up.
Stands her up. She confronts him in front of all the other wise
hot
guys.
as hell, man.
Nobody does that to me. Who the hell do you think you are? Frankie Valli or some kind of big shot?
Take it easy. Slow down, all right? I forgot. I thought it was next week.
It was Friday. It was this Friday, and you agreed, so you're a liar.
Come on, we can talk about this, all right? Take it easy.
Talk about it? Talk to you after what you just did to me?
I remember, she's screaming on the street, and I mean loud, but she looked good.
Think about it. It's gonna cost you, Hill.
I'm gonna make it up.
It's gonna cost you a lot.
She had these great eyes, just like Liz Taylor's.
And you could see him liking it.
Yeah, of course
And then
he is.
being flirty with her, and you go, oh, she's got so much strength.
Yeah.
And you see her wonder and joy at the wedding.
Yeah.
You know, where she's kind of in this, swept up in this world.
Yeah.
And then you see her just insane craziness when in the height of the Janice girlfriend thing, screaming at the door.
Right.
And then you see her really becoming a co-conspirator.
Yes.
As a drug dealer, and just she's now in it.
Because they have to support their life. They have to feed the kids. They have to pay the mortgage. They have to have a life. Yeah.
And so she goes a long way, and she's great. Till at the end, they really are kind of go full circle and partners.
Yeah.
Although by the time she's up with the FBI guy or whatever for witness relocation, she's like, do I really have to go with him?
Yeah.
You know, maybe I could just stay here. And let's get to, should we get to the last day?
I feel like we should talk to the end. Yeah.
Let's get to the end.
Okay.
This movie takes such a shift when we get to the end of the film.
Oh, it's pathetic.
The editing style changes, the pace changes, there are these jump cuts, the music is intense, the makeup on Ray Liotta looking gray and sweaty and pallid, pasty. Yeah, it is. I would turn the movie off.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I had to watch because it's a great film, but like part of me is like, I don't need to do this again.
This is what I argue on the Top 10 show all the time with Matt knows. Matt loves the film so much, but for me, those last 30 minutes undercut the film. And I get it's the point of the film. That's the irony of it all. It's the point of the film. But for me, it leaves me with a terrible feeling about it.
Well, I don't think
because I want to enjoy those guys so much.
I don't think it undercuts the film as a film.
Right. No, not as a film.
I just don't want to watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, of course, what's the point of the film.
Exactly.
It's like to watch. This is where we end up. We end up with a coked up, paranoid, bad person. One of the things that Thomas Schumacher says about it, and you can see it in the way that it's editing, is there are all these things he has to do.
Yeah.
He has to deliver these guns. He has to make sauce. He has to pick up his brother. He has to go over here. He's got to get the drugs. He's got to get away from the helicopter.
Yeah, the helicopter, right.
Is that the way they edited it, all of these things are equal in importance. He no longer can differentiate between the importance of getting away from the police and making tomato sauce.
Because he's high on coke.
Yeah, high on coke and paranoid and really at the end.
Yeah.
And it's really a remarkable, intense, and unhappy sequence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows you, obviously, this is, once again, what we've been saying at the point of the film, it shows you what this lifestyle can lead to.
Yeah.
If it doesn't lead to death, it leads to you being just this pathetic, sad person, and you go back to rags, like you were saying, hustling, because you've got now all these mouths to feed, you've got all this situation, and you have this terrible babysitter who's an idiot, and then you're trying to make the spaghetti sauce for whatever reason that's so important, and then you're trying to do all these things, and it just like, and you have the paraplegic brother or whatever, or son or whatever it is, and then you get all this, and it's just, and at the end, it just all come together and comes crashing crashing down. Like to me, it's like a drum solo by Buddy Rich or something like that. It just goes Krupa, it just goes all the way to, and then at the end, it just ends, and you're just like, man, there it is. It's all on the ground now.
And then we're left with this choice he has to make. Now we're finally faced with a choice set up at the beginning of the film. You can be disloyal or you can die.
Right.
And it seems pretty clear they're going to kill him.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
And this is maybe the most disturbing scene to me in the film is Jimmy saying to Lorraine Bracco, go right down there. You get some dresses.
Right in there, Karen.
Right in there. Right in there.
No, right in there.
So is he going to kill her?
Yes, absolutely.
I think so too.
Because Jimmy's reputation is killing any and all witnesses to save himself. That's just his reputation. I love the big old glasses on De Niro, which conveys the old age that he's at. And that it is creepy the way he's trying to get her to go into that.
Horrible.
And he doesn't push her. Like, he doesn't physically make sure it happens, which is an interesting moment.
And he's not killing her himself.
Right. He's setting up the other situation because he doesn't want to go to jail himself for killing her, right? So it's a dirty, dirty scene, man.
Well, and this is where, like, I kind of go back to, was there any loyalty? Was there any honesty?
That's a good point.
Was there anything here other than mutual self-interest?
Right.
And we were having fun while it was happening?
Well, I think these guys aren't capable, but not necessarily capable of it, because at any moment their lifestyle can be taken away or they can die. So everything is lived on the edge of a pin or the needle or whatever you want to say. It's at any point, any push one way or the other, you're off the pin.
So they're not really capable of like moral choices.
I think Henry is capable of moral choices. I don't think Jimmy. I know you were. I think Jimmy and Tommy are not. I think
Jimmy and Tommy are not.
No, Henry's on the flat part of the needle. Jimmy and Tommy are on the pin part of the needle.
Although Jimmy, without question, cares about Tommy, because when Tommy gets killed,
yes, he does.
And it's beautiful. So to explain what this is, Tommy's going to be a made man.
Yeah,
and there's this big process where he's going to go in and get quote unquote made, which means he becomes a safe person within the mafia.
Yes,
and he goes to this room, and the moment where he walks into an empty room and goes, oh no, and then gets shot in the head is really, I remember when I saw it in the theater and it was shocking.
Yeah.
Totally shocking. And then Jimmy gets the phone call thinking that Tommy's going to be made. And in fact, he finds out he's been killed.
Yeah.
And De Niro's, man, that guy can act.
Yeah.
And it's no, I mean, I don't want to shock anybody, but he's really talented. Deeply, profoundly moved.
Yeah. In that phone booth.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things you can do is cry on camera. That's the hardest thing you could ever do. And De Niro does such a great job in that moment of crying, of like just exasperation, crying that there's nothing to do about it. Because when we're introduced to De Niro and Tommy, they're already friends. They're already connected.
Right.
Henry is the one they're bringing in to their crew. They're already a twosome that knows each other really well. It's like he's his son. Like from what we understand, we don't know that Jimmy has a wife and kids. Like we never see his kids, right? We never see Tommy's wife and kids. We just see, or if we do, it's not really highlighted by anything. We only see the relationship between Karen and Henry. So Tommy, in essence, and Henry to a lesser degree, is one of Jimmy's sons. And at that point, at that time, I think there's a frustration in the death of him because of the relationship, but also because that was going to be their entry into
that was gonna make them
being gangsters, like higher pay bracket or higher income bracket, absolutely as a gangster.
And I want to talk about just this moment of crying, just because you said something that made me think of it, is... as a director, you're trying to get an actor to get to a moment like that. Now, the first thing you need to do is hire Robert De Niro.
Yeah, well, sure,
and
that
you
helps.
probably don't have to do much after. But the question is sort of like, well, what direction do I give? And a lot of times, particularly with young directors, I see them go, can you cry? Can you like be really sad here? This is a terrible direction. And one of the reasons it's a terrible direction is that we need to do what we're doing when we're acting. And something we never do is try to cry.
Right.
No human tries to cry, or very rarely in weird circumstances. Mostly what you're doing is, in fact, the opposite. You are trying not to cry.
Right.
If you watch De Niro in this scene, he is desperately fighting back tears.
Yeah.
And that is what makes the performance work. It's his struggle not to cry.
Yeah.
His struggle to be a man, to hold it all together, and he's failing at holding it all together. That's what's happening there.
Right. And him slamming the phone into the phone and then just...
And covering his face.
Yeah.
That's what's making that work.
Right. Whereas opposed to Will Ferrell and Anchorman is fully laying it all out in the phone booth. Yeah, it's a difference.
Yeah. No disrespect, Mr. Farrell.
No disrespect.
Please don't come at. Please don't kill us.
Please don't kill us, Gangster Farrell. Yeah, so it's the film is just full of such layered and rich performances that it's irresistible. Even the last half hour that's so painful to watch and completely shows you the disgusting nature of this life. It's still irresistible as a movie. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I think in a way you kind of have to talk about Wolf of Wall Street in relationship to Goodfellas.
Sure.
Now, I don't think Wolf of Wall Street is as good as Goodfellas.
No.
I don't think it's the same league.
But it's a good movie.
I like Wolf of Wall Street too. And I think it is very much trying to do the same thing, which is seduce you into this lifestyle, let you have lots of fun until you discover how despicable it is. Yeah. And then you turn on it and it leaves you with a very unpleasant taste in your mouth.
Yes.
And part of why it's unpleasant, and definitely why Goodfellas is unpleasant, is like Karen, when this movie gets handed to you, you're a little bit turned on.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And that's what brings you into the film. You know, and then that's why the end is so bad, because now you're hopped up on coke and desperate and paranoid, and you go, oh, this is what's happened.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to think a little bit about Scorsese's Catholicism in relationship. Is the idea of sin and what the consequences of sin are goes throughout a lot of his films.
Yeah, Mean Streets, Harvey Keitel is definitely doing that, working that out as a avatar for Scorsese.
Right. Yeah. And you know, we don't sin because it feels bad. We sin because it feels good.
Right, of course.
And then this is the consequences. This is where sin takes you. Right. It's I think a deeply moral movie about some deeply immoral or even amoral characters.
Yeah,
you know, that are just out for themselves. So, John, final thoughts on Goodfellas.
If you have not seen Goodfellas in a while, do yourself a favor, watch it. Don't watch the cut version. Watch the real version. And if you can watch a Blu-ray on DVD or digital, whatever you want to do, but watch the real version, because I think the thing that's great about the film is that it gives you an authentic taste of what this life is like. Cuss words and all, dirty violence and all, murder and all, and what can possibly flourish in there and what can possibly be choked to death in there in that lifestyle. And it takes you on an incredible journey that you can't resist going on. And by the end of the movie, you're left, I think, almost like a rag that's had too much water. You're just kind of, and you have to rinse that rag out, and you're just left like laying on the floor, you know, in essence, because it does so much to your emotions. And all the great films really do that, and this one definitely qualifies.
I totally agree. And I think, you know, sometimes when you're going to see a movie, you're going to, you know, have that experience to see that film. And sometimes what you're going to do is to be taken on a journey by a great artist.
Yeah.
And you're in Scorsese's world in a way that very few filmmakers, I think, can put you in their world.
Yeah.
His way of seeing things, his music, his pacing, his style, his sense of humor, and even, I think, the demons he faces within himself, you know, is that I don't think you could make a movie like that if you hadn't had these feelings. Yeah. Even if you think of young Scorsese who was ill as a kid and looking out at the world through a window and looking out at the world through movies and fantasizing about power, about control, about sex, about money, about all these things, and feeling all of that within himself, and then taking this to its logical conclusion within this film. And the logical conclusion is death and violence and despair. And that's where it leads you.
And ketchup with water and spaghetti sauce.
Yeah. I really, and you do feel for this guy.
Yeah, you do.
But I'm going to go back to what I said before. When I see interviews with the real Henry Hill, I have no sympathy for that guy.
I agree with you completely.
I have some for Ray Liotta, none for Henry Hill.
I think I've seen him on like Donahue and Oprah when this film came out, and this guy is not in any way redeemable and nowhere near as attractive and interesting as Ray Liotta makes him in the film.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, we'd love to hear what you think of Goodfellas. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts. I feel like we only scratched the surface. There's a lot more here. If you want to reach me, you can reach me on Twitter at SR Morris. John, where can they reach you?
You guys can always find me at The Rocha Says, ROCHA, on Twitter and Instagram. The Super Animation Game Time at 1 p.m. on Wednesdays. It's at Geek and Sundry's Twitch channel, and occasionally on Collider Movie Talk on Fridays. and this show, of course, obviously.
And Walking Dead?
And the Walking Dead,
Walking Dead
review
recap.
show, which we do every Sunday night, an hour after the East Coast feed is over. So around 8 o'clock, the show comes out every Sunday night.
And you can visit us on Facebook at the Cine-Files, that's CINE-FILES. And please review us on iTunes. The reviews really help. And if you don't, it could be, I'm not going to say the mafia is going to come after you, but we have some connections. I think we've developed them in the course of this podcast, and we might make some phone calls.
And if we don't get enough reviews, we might be Tommy getting shot in the back of the
that's
head.
true. That's true. It's the only thing. If you want to save our lives,
That's right.
please review us on iTunes. 5 stars, please don't kill them, I think is a good thing.
That's a good one.
All right, that's it for this time. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files.